Hello everyone. Nice of you to join us. We're always happy to have you. Welcome to this urban talk on blue economy. We have this talk in two languages today. So we have it in English and in Ukrainian, and one of the speakers will be speaking Ukrainian. So unless you speak both languages, make sure you click on the globe icon that's at the bottom of your Zoom window and join the channel of preference. We are very excited about this talk today, but please tell us in the chat where you're joining us from. Say hi in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from. We always like to see what the outreach of this talk is. We have fantastic speakers today making for an exciting conversation. And I see we're already 25 people in the room. So without further ado, Yevgen, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to host today this conversation with highly distinguished speakers. I would like to kindly ask you, colleagues, to keep your mics on mute if you are not speaking. And my name is Yevhen Pilinnik. I'm a project manager in the innovation team of the Istanbul Regional Hub. As you know, our team works a lot on systems approaches to urban development. And we are very happy to have here our partners today on the call, who I will introduce one by one as they will be speaking. Maybe before we are going into this into the discussion, I would like to kindly remind you again that we have interpretation. Be sure to click the right channel, and I can also say it in Ukrainian. У нас сьогодні є переклад. Будь ласка, оберіть необхідний канал в Zoom, десь там внизу є кнопочка глобус. Okay, switching back to Ukrainian, to English. We would like to have this, as usual, the urban talks would like to have a lean and informal atmosphere to be able to ask questions, challenge our speakers to, get the most out of their brain juices for our benefit. And we worked hard, Darini, Artem, Kiran, and Tatiana today to prepare a good topic for you, which is blue economy. What is blue economy? You probably heard about green economy, blue economy, brown economy, all the colors of the rainbow that you can imagine you would probably find around here. And some of them emerge and die out as some marketing maybe namings for it, but I think actually blue economy is a very timely and critical topic. Today we are going to talk more about systems approaches to a part of community ecosystem development that relates in some way to water, rather than approach to aggregating projects and activities under one a topic of blue economy. And this sphere of our life has immense potential. I was preparing today for this call, and I found that actually more than 3 trillion of global GDP is attributed by 2030 is going to be attributed to blue economy. And if we go down to the city level and take the example, for instance, of Barcelona, 5% of their city GDP, or I should call it in a bit different way, is also attributed to different aspects of blue economy, and also giving work for more than 15,000 people. So yes, blue economy is a systems approach to development of different systems. In this case, we are going to talk about urban systems. It is a huge economic potential, an economic lens that can be transformative for different stakeholders. And in addition, if we're again thinking about the cities, this blue economy presents a very critical area because cities are facing the challenges of constantly changing water bodies. So whether it is floods, whether it is a receding sea line, or on the contrary, that is approaching and cities are facing increasingly wetter areas, it actually allows to both benefit the economic development, social development, but also environmental goals of different cities we have in mind. In addition, it also pushes us a bit into the space of thinking how might we use different nature-based solutions, learning from nature on how different salt marshes, wetlands can be restored to protect and provide benefits to the communities where those ecosystems are present. And then again, to throw another piece of information at you, in Europe only, coastal ecosystems are ecosystem services are valued at around 400 billion euros annually. So we are talking about a huge area that requires not a very hierarchical and top-down approach where you could just put things together as a machine, but a bit of more transformative way of thinking how whole of community can benefit from blue economy. So with this short intro, I would like to hand over to our first speaker, Kiran Bertel, who is a research consultant and founder in a research agency. Kiran, you hold masters in hazards and disaster management, and you focus on researching sustainability themes, both on community, urban scales, and really diverse sectors. And we are very happy to have you because, as we know, you have been looking into blue economy challenges and opportunities on the of this area for communities globally. Over to you. We are very happy to have you today, and would like to hear from you on this topic, some of your insights and challenges that you could share with us.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. Let me start by sharing my screen. So hopefully you can see this. All good. I will make a start. So yes, very nice to be here speaking to you all today. Thank you for the invitation. I will start by briefly introducing myself. So, as was just mentioned, I have a master's in hazards and disaster management. I'm a geographer by discipline. For the last 10 years, I've worked as a research consultant for Arup, leading projects on a range of themes, including urban resilience and sustainability, sustainable
Looking at
housing,
social impact.
and the blue economy. The reason I'm speaking to you today is because the blue economy has been an important part of the last 5 years of my career, and I'll present some learning from the projects that I've worked on. Before I go any further, I'll just make a quick caveat. As we'll get into, the blue economy is a very broad topic with lots of elements, and I wouldn't claim to be an expert in every part of the blue economy. However, there are some things that I've learned regarding the topic, and in particular with respect to cities, that I will outline in the slides that follow. With that caveat out of the way, I'll start with a definition, a good place to start. So what is the blue economy? Well, as you can hopefully see on screen, the blue economy concerns the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihood and jobs, and ocean ecosystem health. I would just like to emphasize the word sustainable. Some definitions equate blue economy purely as ocean economic activity, but true definitions will place the emphasis on sustainability and the responsible and inclusive use of ocean resources for current generations, but also for future generations, and certainly not at the expense of the environment. There are various sectors that the blue economy entails, and I'll highlight some of them in the slides that follow. In terms of the work that I've led on the blue economy, it's focused on coastal cities, but specifically African cities in the Western Indian Ocean region. It's been for an organization called WIOMTA, which is the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association. The first set of studies that you can see at the top has been in collaboration with UN Habitat, and the lower set of studies has been with the cooperation of the Ministry of Blue Economy in Madagascar. In each of these cases, we also commissioned Arup to study baseline challenges and opportunities for cities in the region across different blue economy sectors. In addition to developing a status report and roadmap that you can see on the left-hand side, we also developed, myself, former colleagues, and local partners, 7 city case studies for cities in the region. I think, Davina, you can drop a link into the research if people are not using the QR code that's on screen. In terms of the approach taken to the studies, there's 4 key points that I will outline. Firstly, looking at the definition, we aim to ground these studies in sustainability, and we were constantly looking at the interaction between the environmental, the social, and the economic in the challenges and opportunities. We looked at different blue economy sectors, so some of the more obvious ones, ports and maritime trade, coastal tourism, fishing, aquaculture, marine energy, etc. But then we also looked at cross-cutting themes and cross-cutting sectors, which can either support or undermine the performance of these sectors. So we'll get into that soon, but that includes blue economy governance and planning, the wider operational environment, and marine conservation and climate action. I'd like to think the studies were rigorous. We made efforts to triangulate the information, and in between the different studies that I outlined, there's over 1,000 references. And it was very much collaborative. We worked with co-researchers. In the case of Kenya, we worked with a researcher from Kenyatta University. And in the case of Madagascar, we worked with IHSM, which is the leading marine science academic institution in the country. And then we engaged extensively over actually almost 200 stakeholders on the studies across government, civil society, private sector. Yeah. So that's the approach covered, and now I'll share some lessons across some key sectors and themes. There won't be time in the 20 minutes to cover everything and all the different sectors, but hopefully you can access the links and I'm happy to discuss further after the session. So instead, I'll focus on some lessons learned across some key sectors, and in doing so, I'll touch upon some of the major challenges and opportunities of the blue economy. As I mentioned, the work has had a Western Indian Ocean, East Africa focus, and I'm conscious that a lot of the audience today is focused on or in Eastern Europe, but I've reflected back on the research and I'll share some broader lessons that should be of interest regardless of region. And I've also combined it with some global examples as well as Western Indian Ocean examples. So getting into the key part of the presentation, starting with governance, blue economy governance and planning. As I mentioned in my caveat, blue economy is a broad subject. It involves many different actors, sectors, diverse interests, and different scales of operation. There's a whole range of plans and frameworks that are relevant to the blue economy at national and local levels, and I've tried to outline some of these in the table on the left-hand side. I'm not going to cover them all now, and you can look at it after the presentation. I believe it will be shared with you. But it does highlight some of the coordination challenges in blue economy planning and implementation. Just to look at a few in detail, we have marine spatial planning legislation, which I'm sure most of you know, it allows for the designation of different ocean areas for specific activities. So like you have spatial planning on land, you have spatial planning in ocean waters. You have integrated coastal zone management, ICZM, and that very much focuses on the sustainable management of the land to sea interface. And now in recent years, you have an increasing number of blue economy plans, both nationally and locally, and these need to be coordinated with any ICZM or marine spatial plans that already exist, as well as wider urban development plans for the city in question. The progress regarding this will obviously vary by country and by city. And at the city level, it also depends on the degree of decentralization and the authority and level of fiscal power that's held by local governments. So the graph on the right-hand side highlights how this varied across the Western Indian Ocean countries at the time of study. Do any of you could drop one more resource into the chat at this point? This is an OECD report on the blue economy in cities, which was launched this year. It provides more information on blue economy governance. It appears to be quite a useful resource. So most of the countries and cities that I studied in the Western Indian Ocean region are still at the early stages of blue economy planning and implementation. I haven't worked with this city, but Barcelona stands out as being one of the furthest along in blue economy planning. And I think Yevgen mentioned Barcelona at the start. I'll use this case to highlight some of the key considerations in blue economy planning. The first point is data. Without data, it's impossible to measure progress in the blue economy and assess and understand how the economic, the social, and the environmental factors are being balanced. So the infographic on the left-hand side shows Barcelona's blue economy economic performance data. So blue economy planning must define what will be measured, how it will be measured, and by whom. Perhaps starting with existing relevant indicators that are already being measured in the city, and partnering with universities and private sector may be helpful in this respect. The second point that I mentioned on the previous slide is coordination across plans, departments, and scales. And image 2 in the top right illustrates other coastal and ocean planning measures that Barcelona's blue economy measure has considered. And then the third point that I mentioned is coordination amongst actors. And the bottom right-hand side image shows the range of stakeholders that are involved in blue economy efforts in the city, led by the local economic development agency. And this includes government, academia, marine businesses, and civil society. I could spend the whole 20 minutes talking about blue economy governance, but in the interest of time, I'll move on to some of the specific sectors. And I'll start with ports, maritime trade, and transport. There's a lot of things I wanted to discuss on this particular sector, including the level of involvement that cities have in port management and efforts in green port planning. However, the theme that I decided to focus on in the interest of time is value chain addition. This has been a topic which has come up in pretty much every city that we studied as a significant opportunity to lengthen and strengthen the value chains for the benefit of the city and their residents. And rather than focus on too much on the Western Indian Ocean case studies, I'm going to briefly highlight some key areas for value chain addition using some global city examples. So as you can see in the table, the first is shipping services, and Hong Kong has become a hotspot for maritime services. It has approximately 900 companies doing everything from marine insurance to the buying, selling, and chartering of vessels. It's reportedly created approximately 77,000 jobs, and it's supported by government tax concessions. In Belgium, Antwerp focuses on marine manufacturing and industry. The port generates an estimated annual value addition of 21 billion euros, which is equivalent to 4.5% of Belgium's GDP. Again, it hosts 900 companies, mainly logistics, specialized in cargo processing and substantial petrochemical activity. Third, you can see Los Angeles. It's positioned itself as a center for research and innovation in the maritime sector. The port has established technology incubators for ocean startups. There's a space called AltaSea, which provides extensive warehouse space for these companies and these ventures. And in the last row, we have Hamburg as a leader in port sustainability. It manages approximately 45,000 cubic meters of oil residues annually. It's developing innovative waste separation methods, and it aims to be carbon neutral by 2040. So looking at particular value chains in the country in question, in the city in question, and looking for the opportunities to strengthen and lengthen those value chains and create economic benefits in doing so. Next, I'll move on to coastal tourism. Again, there's many themes I would have liked to have discussed, including environmental and social challenges linked to tourism and over-tourism. However, one interesting issue that came up in the Western Indian Ocean studies is that coastal tourists often bypass cities altogether. They may fly into the city's airports, but then they'll head straight out to the beach resorts. And it was mentioned by certain stakeholders that cities were missing out on potential tourism revenue in the process. In certain cases, tourists may stay in the city, but they will often stay in private resorts with international ownership, and that only benefits a few in the local community that work in that hotel rather than having wider local community benefits. You may get cruise ships which stop at the city, but they won't stop for long, and often the community-based opportunities are missed or underutilized. So with all that in mind, these studies advocate for regional tourism strategies, not to pull tourists away from the beach resorts, but to offer additional but to offer it but to offer additional attractions that can encourage tourists to spend time in the city as well as the beach resorts. But these strategies, as I mentioned, should be grounded in community-based tourism that truly supports local communities and inclusive economic development. So one of the images on the slides provides an example of a regionally coordinated strategy in Australia and some of the activities within this. And then the center image at the bottom shows one of many urban blue economy tourist assets. In this case, it's a floating market near Bangkok, which is popular with tourists, and it's actively promoted by the Tourism Authority of Thailand. Moving on to fishing. I could discuss large-scale fishing, but like tourism, a theme that came up in the studies is how locals can better benefit from the fishing sector. In the Western Indian Ocean region, fishing is a vital livelihood. However, poor equipment and boats often limits the potential of local fishermen, who are then confined to the local waters, and those local waters are then overfished. Also, going back to the point on ports, a lack of processing and storage facilities in cities has reduced opportunities for value addition, adding value to that product. So investment in these particular areas has been a recommendation that came up in several of the studies. Beyond physical interventions, capacity building can be equally important to support local fishers. One case study I wanted to talk about was an app called Abalobi. I can share the link afterwards, but it's a social enterprise behind the app, which is active in East Africa and South Africa. And the app basically connects chefs and restaurants to local fishermen and fisherwomen and their produce. It was a collaboration between the University of Cape Town, the government, and local fishing communities. It basically allows fisher folk to log and authenticate their catches, and then it connects the fisher folk to cooperatives and restaurants, as well as providing access to financial tools. So initiatives like this can really help to ensure that the fishing sector benefits local communities. Now I'll move on to some of the cross-cutting themes in the last 5 minutes, starting with conservation and climate action. So as I'm sure many of you know, well, I'm sure everyone knows, rising sea levels, ocean acidification, these are key issues which affect blue economy and affect us generally. The Western Indian Ocean research explored both the impact of blue economy sectors on climate, but also how climate conversely affects these blue economy sectors. It examined key coastal assets for climate adaptation and for climate mitigation. And in doing so, it highlighted the importance of nature-based solutions, again, which was mentioned at the start of this session. So in the Western Indian Ocean region, mangroves are crucial in both respects. The studies showed how mangrove restoration and conservation is providing climate benefits, but also providing ecotourism opportunities through the use of boardwalks and enhancing coastal biodiversity. One example that I visited was Meader Creek in Kenya, where community-based organizations worked with NGOs to create a habitat that provided these functions. But in doing so, they also offered an alternative livelihood for fisher folk in the area, which were previously overfished. So several benefits with one intervention. As I mentioned earlier, I'm conscious that much of the audience today is focused on Eastern Europe, and mangroves don't thrive in Eastern Europe. but I've included this example to emphasize the broader point of nature-based solutions. So there's many examples of city wetlands in Europe that perform similar co-benefit functions. I was researching before this. Apologies if I get this pronunciation wrong. Vacaresti Nature Park in Bucharest, perhaps familiar to some of you. London wetlands, for me, closer to home. These are some of the examples of nature-based solutions which can provide opportunities in climate action, tourism, and general well-being. The last area I'll look at is the wider operational environment. These are basically the things that can help or hinder the blue economy progress. Infrastructure, transport, education, solid and liquid waste management, all these different areas which affect different sectors. There's not time to talk about all of them, so I'll just highlight a few as examples, but transport was a key factor limiting the performance of certain sectors in the Western Indian Ocean studies. Investments in transport are crucial for unlocking blue growth. For example, in Madagascar, this requires significant transport investment. And in doing so, you could strengthen value chains between the ports, the capital, and rural areas. It's not just Madagascar, as you can see on screen. It was a common issue across Western Indian Ocean countries and cities. And 67% of port operators in the region felt that the road network wasn't sufficient for the port volumes. It's also essential for adding value in the fishing value chain, and transport is often the first experience that tourists will have of a coastal city destination, for either better or worse. In Maputo, Mozambique, a bridge built by Chinese constructors improved connectivity between the city and southern Mozambique, and reportedly this contributed to a doubling of tourism income in certain regions in 2019 after the construction. The second area I want to focus on is waste management. Many cities in the Western Indian Ocean studies face significant infrastructure gaps in both liquid and solid waste management. In cases, sewer connections and waste collection were below 50%. And it's not just the Western Indian Ocean region. Anyone based in the UK that reads the news would probably think twice about swimming in the local waters at the moment. So waste dumping in coastal waters obviously harms marine life. It affects fish and seafood availability and quality. It can damage coastal tourism, and it poses a wider health risk to local populations. So I just draw attention to one of my favorite quotes from the research: "The blue economy will not be fixed in the ocean, but it will be fixed on land." And I thought that was a nice soundbite from one of the stakeholders. It's perhaps easier said than done, but it ultimately comes down to three factors: infrastructure, behavior, and regulation. I'm conscious I'm at 20 minutes, so the last point I want to make, and it's far too complex to do justice in just one slide, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. The slide summarizes the positive and negative impacts of blue economy sectors on cities across economic, social, and environmental dimensions. It also starts to highlight the trade-offs and the interdependencies between blue economy sectors, which makes blue economy planning and implementation complicated. So basic examples, but ports and maritime trade can provide income and employment, of course. They support other sectors like fishing and tourism through cruise terminals. However, without proper mitigation, they can also cause environmental and social issues, such as pollution from construction and operations. And this in turn then affects other sectors like fishing and tourism, which depend on the healthy ocean ecosystem. So the challenge is balancing these impacts and trying to mitigate the negatives and maximize the co-benefits. For example, a green ports plan can reduce the environmental harm from those operations, while, as I discussed previously, mangrove tourism can offer economic benefits, carbon capture, and storm protection. So ultimately, recognizing these connections and engaging with all stakeholders is crucial, which takes us back to the first point in the presentation regarding integrated governance across sectors and across scales. So that is all from me for now. My contact details are on screen, and I look forward to the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kieran, for a very insightful presentation. It's very interesting to see and hear insights from across the globe. There is a small question in our chat, but first maybe one question from me. Stanislav in the chat mentioned that now in Ukraine, there are examples of growing kiwi. And I remember when I was a kid, the growing kiwi, a fruit, was not possible in our climate. So definitely, this is an impact of climate change. If you would imagine future for blue economy, what are the key factors that we should be on the lookout for the future that will change? What will stand out? What is going to transform? What would you expect, having looked at so many different examples?
I'd say in terms of future sectors, there are certain sectors which are growing in their innovation and the impact that they are having, advancements in marine biotechnology, in ocean energy, to name but a few, advances in aquaculture techniques. All these things are making certain blue economy sectors more popular and more impactful. So that's one thing that I would say. In terms of the general factors regarding the blue economy, I'd say it comes back to some of the foundational points of the presentation, just making sure that these blue economy plans are balanced across these different sustainability pillars and integrated with wider economic development plans for that city and that region.
Thank you very much. So we should be on the outlook on more innovation in this space: marine biotech, aquaculture, aqua energy, as you mentioned. And then there is a small question from Alberto in the chat. What does bioeconomy include? You on one of the slides you mentioned, I think about Barcelona. There was a distribution of different economic subsectors under blue economy, port and so on, and there was bioeconomy.
Yeah, I'd say bioeconomy. One thing that I mentioned just then was biotechnology, so marine biotechnology. So I'd say that would be one key component of the bioeconomy. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Kieran. We'll have a chance more to ask questions to you, and we're going to have a panel discussion a bit more strategic questions. But now I would like to introduce our next two speakers, Tatiana and Artem. I would like to also remind all the listeners, participants, that you can actually drop the questions in the chat and we will read them out. So I know Tatiana and Artem are very strong partners. I know you since 2022. We've been interacting on different portfolio work in Mykolaiv, and I'm happy that we are reconnecting in this way, and we have a chance to meet each other across the globe. So very much welcome to both of you. I'll introduce you to the audience. So Tatiana is the head of economic development department and coordinator of Mykolaiv city portfolio. And Mykolaiv is the city in the south of Ukraine, a very beautiful and a big city that is on the wave, as you now say. Tatiana, you are an expert in economic strategic planning and practicing participatory approaches during the last 10 years. Recently, you worked on city development and recovery strategy for the city, and you are also responsible for coordination with on different international projects. And I'm very happy to hear and see that you also have led introduction of participatory budgeting in Mykolaiv. This is something that we are also very much interested. And what is not mentioned in your bio, I know that you are enacting this participatory approach. And Artem here is a partner for Mykolaiv. Artem, you are an executive director of Ukrainian Associations for Business Support Centers and the chairman for Expert Public Council of the executive committee of the Mykolaiv portfolio. So Artem has more than 25 years of experience in strategic management and supporting to small and medium enterprises development, and also promoting a lot of participatory approaches, participatory democracy. And I think having both of you representing civil society, expert community and a city manager is actually the example of what I've been just introducing: participatory and partnership approach. You will have 20 minutes also together to introduce us to the work you did on blue economy in Mykolaiv. We are very much interested in learning on how a city during the war is developing this not an easy sector. Without any further ado, Artem, I think I will hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, Evgen. I will share my screen, and you please let me know if it goes correctly. Just 1 second. So how it works now? Can you see the full screen?
We can see the application with all the buttons and stuff, not only the slide.
Okay, let's try another version of this. Let me do it once again.
Maybe while Artem is sharing the presentation, I would like to tell something about how we decided to present today's presentation, because it's not only participatory cooperation when you mentioned, so it's really, you are right that participatory cooperation with Artem, so it's society councils that actively involved in the city life. And also today we would like present also is mixed ways, so it will be presentation not mine and his, it will be combined presentation, and also he will speak English and I will speak Ukrainian, in order to show that even other languages can help us to make this portfolio for the city. So we can do this even presentation in a mixed way that show our cooperation in the city.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I still struggling with the PowerPoint to show you the full screen. And yeah, anyway, you know, it's important to say that yes, really in Mykolaiv we have the strong experience of working together with the civil society and their the city government. Let me, okay.
It looks the same for us, but I think you can proceed with this. This is okay.
Okay, let's proceed like this. So first of all, as already mentioned, in the city of Mykolaiv, even before the war, we were strongly promoting the participatory approach as a part of the city development. And in this framework, in Mykolaiv, we have very strong expertise. As the part of the city self-governments, we have the civil society institution, basically their public council, which combines the representatives of the different non-government organizations, is advising the city in implementing different new policies and solutions. So on the slide now you see, and it's basically for the colleagues who are maybe not well know the geography of Ukraine, just to give you the brief understanding where we are. We are on the south part of Ukraine, bordering, having the Black Sea coastline, and Mykolaiv is the center, historically the center of marine trade and shipbuilding. So 5 ports are located in the city. The city is the heart of the whole region. Also, the 4 shipyards, turbine building plant, a number of food processing companies, fishing, aqua farming, So this is basically the background of the community. I think it's also described why the blue economy was recognized as the perspective recovery tool, because as you're all familiar, now we have the situation of war. And I will ask Tatiana, as she operates the most economic data of the city, to give some briefs about the current situation in the city. Tatiana, please.
Так, ми хотіли почати наш такий шлях до портфоліо, розповівши деякі
All right, here we go.
різниці, чому
So I'd like to tell you
блакитна економіка
some things
стала
about the city
ключовою
and why the
трансформацією
blue
нашого
economy
міста
has
по
become
майновому відновленні. Перш за все,
key
ви
in the
бачите,
post-war
це
recovery
карта
efforts.
Миколаївської області, по суті.
That's the map of the Mykolaiv region. You can see the Mykolaiv city, and there are 4 ports that are in the region. 3 of them are in Mykolaiv city. One is the river port. It is also within the city limits. Right now they have been blocked, put in ice, and the hostilities are happening pretty near, and that's why ships are not going there any longer. Even foreign ships cannot enter the city. Before the war, you would get about 24% of all cargoes that would be coming to Mykolaiv for transshipment, and that would give a lot of benefits to the city economically. Now it's not happening. So we have to think of other transformation pathways and economic benefits for the sake of recovery. Even in peaceful living, the ports would not produce enough tax revenues and benefits for the locals. So the transformation of the ports is necessary, and it should be done the way it would produce more revenues to the budget of the city, and it would reduce the ill effects on the lives of the locals. And we have been on it in our pilot project based on the master plan, and that's where the blue economy is one of the key recovery topics. Speaking of the damage, I have to tell you that the city has taken quite a lot of fire in 2022. Almost every day it would get hit. More than 54% of critical infrastructure and more than 50% of social infrastructure has been damaged. Housing infrastructure has been damaged as well, largely. So some people cannot make it back to the city because they've got nowhere to live out there. Recovery efforts are underway, and actively so. So this slide should allow me to tell you more. And her connection is acting up. More about recovery, actually.
Матеріальних мільйонів доларів, вони потребують не тільки відновлення, як
There is a need for funding to make recovery a real deal,
краще, ніж було.
to make it even better than what it was before. The next slide will allow you to see what is being done to make it happen.
Can you see already the next slide?
No, not yet.
No.
We're still having some. Let me try it again. I think we were having some problems with connection because we have the electricity cut-offs basically every day. So I will try again. What about now?
Yes, now looks perfect.
Good. So, okay, yeah, we can proceed. And before I will pass the word to Tatiana again, I will say that even before the war, we together were developing the background for blue economy as the direction for the Mykolaiv city development, as Mykolaiv is the location point of Ukrainian maritime cluster, basically the major non-government player in this field. And for 7 years, Mykolaiv was hosting the European Maritime Day as the city part of the European Maritime Day platform, communication platform of European Union, each year gathering the representatives of the maritime regions all over the Europe. Tatiana?
Що стосується саме проекту «Мери за економічне зростання», то місто Миколаїв
There's a
доєдналося
Mayors
до
for
нього ще
Economic
до
Growth
війни.
project, and the city
Саме
joined it before the
2017
war.
року є активним учасником цього
Since
проекту.
2017, we have been an
Але
active part in this
став
endeavor.
пілотним містом у впровадженні портфельного підходу у
Then the portfolio
2021
approach
році
came up
наприкінці, і ми почали
in the end
активно
of
працювати з людьми над розбудовою
2025,
нашого
and
портфоліо. На жаль, саме
we started
військові
building the
дії, вони
portfolio, but
припинили цю
unfortunately,
роботу,
because of
але
the war, it had
її
to be stopped.
відновили. І
But then
шляхом
we
такого
resumed the
в
activities,
цьому
and
була навіть особливість впровадження портфельного
I'm going to
підходу на
tell you
прикладі
about the
Миколаєва.
peculiarity of this
Миколаєві,
approach in
що
Mykolaiv.
відповідно до стандартів, які впроваджуються в рамках портфельного підходу, це відбувається
In
протягом
the
року. В
portfolio-based
інших
approach,
країнах, в інших містах ми це
it
зробили
takes a
протягом
year to
3
do it,
місяців. Ми
but we have been
сформували
able to do it in
акціонерний
3
план, в
months.
якому
So
залучені бізнес,
we
громадські
set up a working group
організації,
feature and business
університети,
community,
міська влада.
NGOs,
Протягом 3
universities, local
місяців ми
authorities.
напрацювали
Over 3 months, we have been able to
10 опцій, потім їх
produce 10
проаналізували,
options, then
вибрали
we took
5,
stock of them and
відповідно
chose
до
5
яких
out
ми
of
зараз
10.
і рухаємось.
And
І
right
якраз
now
на
we're moving
наступному
along
слайді
those
ми
5,
можемо їх побачити. Будь ласка, наступний слайд.
and you're going to see them right here.
Already?
Yes.
Так, це я назову коротко про ці основні опції, які в нас є. І
So
потім
these are
Артем
the major
перейде
options on the
більш
table right now. Then
детально до
Artem
їх
will give you more
розгляду.
detail on that.
Що стосується цих опцій, перше хочу зазначити, в чому особливість цього портфельного
So
підходу,
let
те,
me
що в
tell
нас
you
є
what's the
можливість
special thing about this approach.
апробувати певні
We
невеликі
can do the testing
проекти, так звані
through
опції,
small
і
projects. We
потім їх
can test those
масштабувати на
options through projects, and then we can scale them across the rest of the city.
дуже складні, і вибрати якусь
It's not an
правильне
easy thing
рішення
to
дуже
do, and
складно.
it's
Саме
hard to
цей
choose the right decision, the right way to
дозволяє
go.
це зробити
But this
і
particular approach allows us to do something like that. And we can dynamically modify certain options in order to make them fit the realities out there. So there are 5 options, 2 big projects and 5 smaller ones.
Базу знань, яка нам потрібна.
There's a particular knowledge base we're going to need. We determined the tools we're going to need to communicate externally and internally. And we have determined the transformation of 3 areas in the city that should allow us to become an economic driver, transforming the city's economy. So it's the shipbuilding plant compound, industrial park facility, the school of young sailors, and the area around it, the grounds around it. And thanks to Italian companies and local public, we have been able to delve into that, and we have been able to see how it can best be done inside the city. I am the first deputy from the city. We actually coordinate things in the project. We make sure that everything goes as planned. Under the umbrella of the city mayor, all of this is done. The mayor is immediately involved in the project himself. And that allows us to make sure these practices go places in the city, and it fits very well into the blue economy. It becomes a part of the strategic papers in the city. And thanks to the NGOs and CSOs, we get a better idea of what the locals need, what they would like to see happening in the city post-war. Back to Artem.
So, colleagues, coming back to the history, because as far as I understood, most of you would like to know how technologically it was implemented even during the wartime. So, in the period of forming the working groups, and it was very important to attract basically the major player from academia, non-government sector, government institutions, and basically the business. Forming then the implementing group, we also were using the same approach. For us, it was very important to address the management of the options, each of 5 selected during their preparing the portfolio, with the people who are experts in their field, have the perfect reputation, are well recognized, and able to not only manage the project, because all they have the project management experience, but also to attract other stakeholders and facilitate the discussions. Some of things we are recognized from the very beginning and being promoted during all the project development, that it's very important, and it's basically for any strategies and strategic decisions, that in order the strategy of let's say project portfolio solution be successful, it should be either recognized and well known to the community, the major stakeholders who would see their role in development and further implementing, believe in that, and so their active involvement of community and the stakeholders allows us to succeed in that. So, for example, the option which was focused on reconstruction our city waterfront, basically we started from the School of Young Sailors, and I will give you some ideas after. So the person, he is basically the chief of the Association of the Architects of the Mykolaiv region. So the person with the great knowledge in architect and also well known in the community. The person whom we apply for running their, I will say this sophisticated option for developing the revitalization concept for Mykolaiv shipyard. He has either the background in shipbuilding, also the long story of working in the Ministry of the Strategic Industries of Ukraine, and also the membership in the maritime cluster. Basically, the same approach was used in selecting the strong management team, which further will already working with the 5 options of the portfolio. So the main tasks we underline for our portfolio team together with the city government. So for the city of Mykolaiv to become a dynamic economic regional center on attracting people and investments. As we were saying, before the war, we were thinking about this only in the framework of development, but now it's basically the framework for the future recovery of the city and its economy. Actively involve and engage citizens, academia, and private sectors. I already commented on that. And support Mykolaiv as a city of green and blue transition through research and development, innovations, and sustainable economy. And as you see, it's absolutely in line what the Kirian was saying to us during the first part of our today talk. So what were the plans and the beginning? As I mentioned, so we plan to develop the new concept for the School of Young Sailors. Why this place? Because as we are saying, everything what relates to the, let's say, water, sails, sea, it's part of the city DNA, the DNA of the people living in this part of Ukraine. And the School of Young Sailors is one of the oldest educational facilities for kids, where the first, let's say, maritime career steps was done by several generations of the people. So we were planning to reshape this location, and further I will show you what we actually exceed using the participatory approach and strong involvement of the maritime community. So another was the concept and design for maritime industrial park. Please mind the name maritime. At the beginning, also, we are thinking that we will focus on the maritime industries only, so the park will be designed precisely to allocate the maritime industries. And then you will see with how we shape the concept together with the community and our international partners. Support for the green and blue transformation and small and medium-sized businesses. Yes, and further I will start particular from this option. because it's absolutely crucial for the community and the local businesses to understand what is this sometimes rather sophisticated economic approach means for them in practical use. Because, you know, business is all about the money, and it's all about their basically the ability to plan the economical activity. So as the community, we want the local businesses to move together with the city in a blue economy direction. So we would like to give more information to the businesses about either the concept, and also to make the information and the knowledge available, because most of the developments in this field, you know, till the beginning of implementation of portfolio was developed in English. And as far as you know, the language issue sometimes is creating the barriers. So one of the ideas we had behind was to make the local language information available for the big amount, for big number of the people, focusing on the business. Support the development, the enterprises. So as the part of this option you will see was the self-assessment instruments. I will focus on them later. And basically mapping and assessment of the needs for the technical support for the consultancy, for the SMEs in this field. Conceptualization of the Mykolaiv shipyards, as I told you, was one of their, we can say hard, because please imagine that basically this shipyard was the heart of the city shipbuilding since 18th century. And for many citizens, this particularly this shipyards, amongst other three, basically is seen as a symbol of their the maritime, the shipbuilding glory of the city. So we have to be very, let's say, accurate in reformulating, revitalizing this territory. And we managed to do this. And the strategic partnership and communication channel for Mykolaiv as a city on the wave. You know, it's very important for us to develop the, let's say, open communication, showing, presenting the city of Mykolaiv in the right way, showing its, let's say, new positioning as the center of shipbuilding, and also attracting the new partners to work together during the city recovery and the further development. So that's why such balance of, let's say, soft and hard infrastructural projects was selected. Tatiana, would you like to add something at this stage?
Я думаю, що у нас не так багато часу. Давайте
Yes.
пришвидшимося.
I don't think we've got the luxury of time, so we're going to have to go through the concepts. I think it is important to say a few words about the experts involved. There have been some, actually a lot have been involved, leading to the results we're yet to see in this concept.
Just on the slide, showing how many experts been involved. And I have to say that most of these experts were just volunteering. So more than 900 person hours been investing by their representatives of Mykolaiv community in order to develop this strategical directions, in order to develop the portfolio and the solutions which became the result of this. So we work in the format of working groups, strategic session, consultation, and just to see just portion of the stakeholders who've been involved, starting from the local and the regional government, the academia, businesses who've been working with us in this project. So as I mentioned, support for the blue and green transformation for the small and medium-sized businesses was among the first focuses we we were working. And as a result, we created not only the knowledge base of the blue and green economy, and we developed it together with National Academy of Science and the best practitioners. Now, please, you can use this QR code and get the direct access for the web platform, which hosts the whole database, knowledge base, and also their innovative instrument for the self-assessment for the businesses to find their position in the field of the blue economy, to be able to see their strengths and weaknesses and get their suggestions of what kind of activities they should implement and what kind of information and knowledge they could get access. So this was the part of activities in this first option, together with the development of their recommendation for the city council to implement the program. And I think the practical instruments are very important. So we recognize the needs, and as a result, suggest some practical instruments of financing, consultancy, and other to support the local businesses in blue economy transition.
If I may suggest to give you like additional 1 or 2 minutes, and then we move to panel discussion. I think we will be able also to explore more about Mykolaiv in the discussion.
I will skip several slides.
Тоді, може, якщо ми там 1 минутка у нас залишилася.
Okay, if we've got just a couple of minutes to go, I think I'm going to tell you this. Just briefly about these 3 areas. They matter to the city so much. These concepts have been put together in our cooperation with an Italian company, One Word, and I think these areas can become economic drivers in the post-war recovery. We should revitalize Factory 61, which is in downtown city. It can be transformed into the mixed usage area, which is good for the business, and people could spend some time pretty well there. An industrial park could be set up, a special area where tax benefits would be envisioned for the operators there. In the existing legislation, we can see that areas like Mykolaiv and other areas near the front line, they should enjoy privileges and preferences to make us more competitive vis-a-vis other cities in the country. And the aquaport, the School of Young Sailors, and the coastal areas and facilities nearby, this could be a comprehensive project for public space, and it would unlock the access for the locals to these coastal facilities.
This 3 infrastructure project. This is the one of the existing brownfield shipyard, which now wasn't working for around 30 years. And what's important is that the part of the city river aquatoria was basically excluded from the city life. So one of the ideas is to bring this aquatoria back. So we were very practical, working together with the Italian partners from One Works, and we should say thank you to UNDP for opportunity to combine the local initiatives and their experience from one of the best architectural bureau in Europe. So this is basically the future view, how we see the territory of the former shipyard with all the new directions of their activities there. But I should mention that we recognize that we should left part of the territory for the small shipbuilding, small-scale building, shipbuilding, basically service for the small vessels, and technological park as a driver for innovational development, together with the physical industrial location. Aquaport. As I mentioned, we start from the School of Young Sailors, but during the discussions and just some illustrations of the fruitful discussions we have. So we recognize that we now should look not only on just one building, but together to see the whole territory of the city waterfront, covering the territories of both sides of the river, and also during this planning to put together the vision of the city, but also the interest and the plans the local businesses have, particularly the one who have the ownership of the land on this riverside. So this is how we see the future view of this waterfront territory. Already mentioned Mykolaiv Industrial Park. Also, as I mentioned, we started from the concept of maritime park, but during the discussions, understanding all the challenges of the war, we saw that we should use more wider, let's say, specialization, including the logistics center, innovation center, the food processing, and the very important thing was to design park using the sustainability approach and to plan already the green zone and the green barriers which will separate the park from from the city, and you see it now on this plan. And yeah, this is the planned view for the industrial park in Mykolaiv as it was developed. And the communication channel, the City of the Way, to show the Mykolaiv, to communicate their future recovery. Basically, we already started this process. The special images being created, particular to communicate these changes and to communicate the Mykolaiv.
I think Artem got frozen. Is it only for me or everyone?
No,
For everyone.
Okay.
Yes, so це якраз інструмент конференції, яка у нас відбулася 31 жовтня, перший раз.
On the 31st of October, a conference has been held featuring our colleagues from the UN and the embassies, and that's where we have been able to present our products, and this tool is helping us spread word and engage more funding to implement the projects. So thank you for your attention. We're ready to take on any questions.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. I hope Artem is going to be back very soon with us on the call. I actually wanted to, there are a few questions already in the chat, and I wanted to invite everyone to post questions now. We have a bit of time to discuss among the speakers today. Before going into that, actually, Kiran mentioned like a very holistic approach to blue economy that includes environmental management, that includes economy, social side. I wanted to ask Tatiana and maybe Artem how the environmental side of blue economy is present in your portfolio in Mykolaiv. I saw that you have you did some planning for green zones, but is there a specific activities or thinking on saving waterfronts, on aquatic life and so on there? Can you mention?
Да, що стосується цього питання, то слід зазначити, що всі проекти вони розробляються.
Well, I can tell you this. All projects feature this component. We consider the benefits for environment, like existing rivers, and we combine green zones at the riverside areas. So these kinds of projects allow us to bring the environment back to the locals. So the locals can discover some of the areas for themselves, and they recognize the limits that you get out there right now. We want to revitalize Factor 61. That's where you get old technologies, old facilities, right now. So we do seek to combine green zones with riverside areas and all that. We want to make sure it's not going to be off limits to the locals, and I think that should allow us to make those facilities more sustainable and more open to the locals.
I will also add, if you don't mind, I will add, let's say, from the side of the soft projects in the framework of our portfolio. So we basically stated that we would like to support in the framework, for example, of the city programs, and as the part of support for the local businesses, the Blue Innovation Challenge, which was also the part of these activities, to support the ecological businesses, to support the businesses who are developing their ecological solutions. So to implement the support instruments focusing on such innovations.
Thank you very much, Artem, for additional perspectives. We also have one quick question from Alberto in the chat towards Mykolaiv, so I'd like that to be addressed. It's a common question. How safe is it to revamp waterfront infrastructure in the school for young sailors and so on? How do you see the risk of being shelled again and further damages to the city? I think you always get this question whenever you go.
Звичайно, є ризик того, що наше місто буде...
Well, certainly there is a certain risk of getting shelled again while the war is underway. If you think of the facilities we are considering, well, we're going through these concepts in minute detail. As far as the School of Young Sailors is concerned, we are into the second phase of the project now. So right now we're drafting project paperwork and the concept, which envisions the modification of the school and the grounds around it. So we're not doing any construction work yet. We know that they might be damaged, so we're thinking of this as a post-war recovery. So now we want for the businesses and projects to get started. There's a Blue Innovation Challenge for that. So we'd like to let the businesses start doing something, some local small projects, and we'll see how they're going to do this in the blue economy concept. Speaking of the hard projects, the industrial park, to name one, is going to be launched pretty soon too, but we have to get insured against the risks. The government should help us with that. So there are certain ways of doing that. Speaking of new construction, well, there are certain risks as well, and sometimes you can get an insurance on that, which includes the war-related ill effects. So there are certain options, there are certain ways. We just have to get prepared to implement that at full blast.
I will add that, colleagues, we are absolutely confident so that this project, they need a rather long timeline to be physically implemented. But we have, the big homework to be done prior the physical implementation of this. So we are not saying that, let's say in 2 weeks or let's say half a year, we will physically be able to start reconstruction. But we are able to prepare the city strategy, the physical plans and drawings for example, for specific objects to be built or reconstructed after the end of the war. So we also understand that the border with the Russia, we will not move this border. It will physically left on its historical 1991 year place. But why we are creating such let's say favorable, and we want to have the very favorable environment for the business development in Mykolaiv, basically to compensate this risks of potential let's say neighboring the Russians, but also with the very favorable environment in the city of Mykolaiv to keep the city competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Artem, for clarifying. I think it's a very interesting approach to incentivize economic growth already now, or maybe keep it at the level so there is no under a lot of pre-war. And I think it's a perfect segue into the question I'd like to actually ask Kiran. I would like to hear maybe a bit from you to reflect. So you've researched a number of cities, and you did present like a very holistic approach to blue economy. And you've heard also from Mykolaiv that they are very much focusing on economic development and growth as a blue economy, of course, integrating sustainability considerations in different options. But how can cities best balance water conservation with economic growth? Is there something that you saw, like a rule of thumb or a good practice of balancing conservation of ecosystems with economic growth?
Thank you. Firstly, let me say it was very interesting to see from the theory that I presented the kind of practical examples in the Mykolaiv presentation regarding the extensive stakeholder engagement, a very rigorous process that involves a lot of different actors in that conversation. And I think that is an important first step within that to make sure that all the different stakeholders with the different interests, including environmental stakeholders, are engaged in the conversation from the outset. I think practically some things I spoke about in the presentation were marine spatial planning and integrated coastal zone management. But beyond that, other environmental plans and making sure that your blue economy efforts are aligned with existing environmental goals and that safeguards and regulations are in place. I think then beyond that, it's, as I mentioned in the presentation, it's about looking for those co-benefits, those win-wins, the mangrove park that can attract tourists, be an economic benefit, but also serve an environmental purpose. And in cases, of course, there needs to be economic development projects, but making sure that you mitigate the negative impacts of such projects. You know, so if you're going to do port development, make sure that you align with green port principles and you have plans in place to prevent the pollution, you know, and to stop invasive species, etc. And then I guess that comes back to the other point that I made regarding data and making sure that you can properly monitor, regulate, and enforce this. So there's a capacity building element to make sure that you understand and you're monitoring the impacts of such initiatives.
Thank you, Kiran. Actually, you came back to the topic of data, and indeed, Mykolaiv presented a very rigorous approach, like 360 consultation, engagement of really wide ecosystem. This is something to be applauded, and as Elina mentioned in the chat, we are very much inspired by Mykolaiv case of working during the war and trying to build these ambitious visions moving ahead. Maybe I can address the next question to Tatiana and Artem. And if you can address the point of data. So Kiran mentioned, like, in order to know whether we are going forward with blue economy, we need to know who's working in one economy, how big is our impact, what's the footprint of it, and so on, different factors. But my main question is, maybe we know today we usually gather a lot of city representatives. And what if some of our participants today would want to go and integrate blue economy in as a key strategic priority for their cities? What advice would you give them, and what's the role of data there from your practice?
Tatiana, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. Дуже дякую за запитання. Дійсно, питання.
Thank you for the question. Data really matter. In our portfolio, option one was the analysis of stakeholders that should get out there right now. And Artem named the components that are entailed in it. So that would allow us to get a good idea of what we've got going on out there and how can we use that. So we have inherited some stuff in Mykolaiv in the maritime sector, and there are many designing institutions, factories that used to work. I would not say that it's gonna go back to the way it was before, but that industry should be developed in some other way. We need to refocus onto building small ships, because building bigger ships is not going to be a good thing for Mykolaiv any longer. So speaking of possible advice, I think you got to take stock of what you've got in the community right now and see if this approach will fit into that. Maybe the existing products can underpin further development, further progress, and then it's good. But you have to monitor this. You have to figure out if that's the way it is. So you have to do the analysis and see what you're going to get started with and how it's going to unfold, pan out in future.
First of all, it's absolutely key to do a very detailed analysis of really what we have. What we have, as Tatiana mentioned, from the point of, let's say, physical infrastructure, let's say, historical industrial heritage, the traditional economical activities, what we have, let's say, in the field of the acting businesses. So for this purpose, we developed the mapping of the stakeholders, the mapping of the companies who are already operating in the blue economy sphere, and also to let's say, to put together the academia with the access to the knowledge and proper education in the fields where businesses will need the new labor resources after. So basically preparing the ground for the further development in selected dimension. So once again, analysis plus knowledge plus, once again, I will direct you to this, very strong involvement and understanding the future perspectives by most of the stakeholders. So for, let's say, most of the people in the community to see their personal, their family's perspective in the way the city decide to move.
Thank you, Artem, for this powerful comment, and to every family to see how this is becoming part of their life and changing that. I have a totally different question I think for three of you actually, and you've all presented different and very ambitious approaches to urban development or overall development of coastal zones, and usually though those projects require resources beyond a city, a region can have. So we need to be really innovative in the way we mobilize resources, find funding to preload and invest a lot in things that will be generating value in environmental terms, in economic terms, in social results beyond. And so my question is about the financing mechanisms for this. In your experience, who is the most interested and comes to this project and say, actually, you have a great vision and we have resources. Who are those? Or maybe if flip it around to which mechanisms should be considered? And maybe Kiran, if you could start with answering, if you're okay with that. I think you also did mention some of the financing mechanism in your presentation. Yeah.
Sure, happy to. Maybe I can just broadly outline some of the financing mechanisms, and then Artem and Tatiana can give their practical experience in this. But I guess just running through them, it obviously depends on context, and each location is different, but some of the mechanisms may be government grants and subsidies for blue economy development. It may be, in cases, international financing mechanisms, things like global environmental facility, etc. There's finance for sustainable programs, which aligns with the blue economy. One thing I mentioned in the presentations is public-private partnerships, if done in a sustainable way. there's good examples of sustainable PPPs in cities like in the US. I think Portland and Cincinnati have done good waterfront developments through PPP activity. Another one to mention is bonds. So green bonds, blue bonds. I've seen evidence in the past of cities using issuing green bonds, for sustainable projects. I think Johannesburg is a good example from the past. So I guess similarly, blue bonds to raise funds for blue economy projects. We spoke about tourism. Obviously, it depends on the arrangements of local government, but there's lots of cities that charge tourist taxes and can use some of that money for funding blue economy initiatives. So that can be another source. And yeah, another last thing that I spoke about in the presentation is incentives, for sustainable blue economy activities, which can then attract private sector actors to finance projects. So that's a quick run through, and I'll pass it over to colleagues.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to make clear that to switch to our practical experience, we should mention that the big portion of these instruments now are not available for Ukraine because of the risk of the war. So from, let's say, pre-war experience, one of the instruments, yes, it could be the local funds, the local budget funds. And at the very beginning, Yevgen mentioned that in Mykolaiv, we were strongly working on participatory budget. So where the city was basically allocated part of the city budget to be devoted to the specific projects generated by the local community in specific fields. So such type of instruments could be used, let's say, as a general instrument. Unfortunately now, because of the war and the real economic situations, such resources are not available in the local budget, but they could be used. Another example, and now we are testing, we already were mentioning it, the Blue Innovation Challenge, basically another instrument to support the local innovation focused on blue economy. And thanks to UNDP, now we have the resources from UNDP as an international institution helping us to test this instrument. But after war, such instruments also could be part of their, of the city instruments to focusly support the particular activities in the field of the blue economy. From our personal, let's say, practical experience, the basically already available and working resources is the European funds for Ukraine, as now the country moving toward the membership, the candidate states. Many European funds are already available, and for example, our team, we are currently running several projects in the framework of European trans-border initiatives. So we are receiving money there. So we are working in consortium with other international partners, and some of them are focused particular, let's say, on ecological education. I give you an example. So working to prepare the kids for understanding their basically the sustainability approach, and to teach them basically to live in with these values, I will say.
Thank you.
So European funds also could be another part of the resources.
Thank you, Artem. Tatiana, if you can just shortly mention, how are you planning to fund the technopark or industrial park? How is it going to happen? I know it's in plans and it's not now, but what's the plan for that?
Якщо казати про індустріальні парки, по-перше, є державні програми.
Speaking of the industrial parks, there are existing government programs for supporting industrial parks. So prior to establishing it, we can apply for funding for that, just for the industrial parks. If you think of other facilities, well, the rest of the park could be built at the expense of investors, if any. If you think of the school of young sailors, well, it should be refurbished at the expense of the donors. The local budget will not just pull it off, and it will not be able to pull it off over the next 5 years or longer. Co-funding is an option. We might get additional spendulix from some donors, European financial institutions, whatever. There might be a lending program of a kind helping us with that. And also PPP seems to be a good thing. It should be happening in the country, and we're going to be piloting this in Mykolaiv, and we're going to choose a facility which can be funded through the PPP. So there is work in progress, and we're exploring all the avenues to fund the projects, at least to prepare them for implementation.
I would like to bring us to the closure of our today's discussion. It was a pleasure to moderate today, and thank you for presenting very interesting cases that are very different. We heard more of a conceptual approach. We heard also a very practical approach and some insights. I would like to hand over back to Darini to make a short announcement. But from my side, sincere appreciation for your time, for participants to listening in and staying on. And maybe let's work on blue economy, but let's not be blue ourselves.
I love this. This is a fantastic conclusion, Yevgen. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, fantastic speakers. I want to mention a special hats off to our translator, who's been going back and forth between English and Ukrainian. Very much appreciated to make this talk quite engaging for everyone. Also, heads up that Stanislav has been sharing some insightful links in the chat. So we have an example on Poland as well. So make sure to click on those links. Kieran also provided a lot of links from his presentation. So a lot of additional resources there. I hope you enjoy the conversation. This conversation has been recorded, so you will be receiving. You're all registered here. You're gonna be receiving the recordings, and thanks to the speakers, you're also gonna be receiving the presentations. So you're gonna have a lot of notes to go through if you're curious to hear more about blue economy. And the last thing I'd say is our last talk of the year is happening next week. So I dropped in the chat the link to register. It's going to be about reimagining urban spaces. We're going to talk about tech, smart cities. We're going to talk about human-centered solutions as well. And we're taking a journey from west to east, so with Bosnia, Jordan, and Armenia. So make sure you join if you can. And if not, I will see you in the new year. But again, thank you everyone for your time today. Very appreciated as usual. And I hope to see you soon. Take care, everybody. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.